over 35 years of experience in the Australian nursery and wider horticultural industries. Lovely having you with us, Mr. Ian. And moving on to Mr. Alan Ma, CEO of BGI West Asia and board member of Gina Live. Yeah? Gina Live. Lovely. And you have over a decade of global business management expertise, having previously served as a diplomat of China. You have an understanding of international relations and cross-culture dynamics, which is important, and it's really lovely having you contribute your expertise with us here today. Dr. Damien Smith, you have a PhD in ecology, and you are a specialist in the terrestrial ecology of the Middle East, focusing on Saudi Arabia. Your main focus are botanical species on the coastal area and its habitat as well. And we have Dr. Nasser bin Bakhit, Director General of Seed Center, Director of the Plant Genetic Resource Bank, and Secretary General of the National Committee for Plant Genetic Resources and Chairman of the Seed Producers Committee. أهلا وسهلا بك معنا في هذه الجلسة، سعيدين بتواجدك معنا. حضورنا الكريم، سنتحدث باللغتين في هذه الجلسة، الإنجليزية والعربية، فإن كنتم تحتاجون أجهزة الترجمة فهي متاحة لكم. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be speaking both in Arabic and English in this session, so if you do need the translation devices, please go ahead and use them. سيد عبد العزيز، سعيدين بتواجدك معنا. لعل لديك عرض مرئي نبدأ به قبل أن نتحدث ونخوض في أسئلتنا، فلتتفضل.
شكرا لكم وشكرا على القائمين على هذا الملتقى الرائع، و يمكن نتحدث باللغة العربية والسلايد موجود باللغة الإنجليزية، فبالتالي نشرح بشكل عام على موضوع برنامج الرياض الخضراء والأعمال اللي تقوم فيها. برنامج الرياض الخضراء يستهدف زراعة 7.5 مليون شجرة في مدينة الرياض. سيرفع من نسبة التشجير من 1.5 إلى 9%.
Over 9% of greening in the kingdom, and including the 98% which is considered as the renewable energy in the kingdom. We are talking about the opportunity of having 50% underdeveloping and developed opportunities of planting 7, as we have seen now on the presentation. It's more than planting lands, including services, schools, and other aspects, and having enablers which tackles many issues and reuse them of improving the soil and other aspects included in this initiative. In addition of the community engagement in planting the greens and plants, and controls the sectors of the urban, besides of planning regulations of planting in the kingdom. Almost to plant 7 billion plants, we have it in 2 terms. The first term is to have 120 services, of having 6,000 services plus health services, talking about the urban lands, of having the great governmental services, and the planting services are not only planting services, but we have landscapes and coordinating sites. And other sessions in the street, they are added to the Saudi Green Initiative. also in the parks, it will be many other services which reinforce the community participation and communication. Concerning the matter of the topic of planting in the urban areas are mostly called the regulations, which mainly concern with the particular issues which handles the irrigation and plants and other things. Finally, the roadmap for having a better quality of trees. Then executing treated water, and now we are working on 70%. Then working on the treated water, which exceeds 300,000 kilo. Then in this opportunity there are many plants that's to be treated in this regard inside the kingdom. We're going to tackle the issue of planting in the urban areas is to reduce humidity, plus the discussion of the international and national universities, plus the humidity in the oceans resulted from the land, as it is an umbrella in the street without any feeling of the high temperature. The factor of planting of plants or greening plants is a key contributor to reduce the high temperature coming from landscape, which protect the individuals on Earth. So this can enable people to take actions in the streets and helps them for an air freshener in the street as well. Plus it is beneficial for people in terms of the health care. Talking about the average between 2000 and 2050, plus increasing the areas, planting areas in the cities, which is considered as 16 double number of living in here. One of the developed aspects here is to use plants and controlled water in addition to the treated water. These are the perceptions we have worked on 2016. Thank God Riyadh hosted the summit 2020, plus the rivers, which are the open green spaces. It's very interesting as a reflect what you have exhibited in the real life, which are represented on the presentation. You have got the expertise in this field. What are the lessons, the learned lessons we can benefit from in this field. We have the subsequent center which produce high quality plants and ensure that they are in a good quality, uh, moving them to the laboratory to make sure of this high quality, then analyzing the soil and other things to support the idea of having great trees. In addition, we are working on teaching with great measures, plus producing local nurseries, can we say that nurseries helps the kingdom to move into a better grain plants? Moving to Dr. Nasser, let's start our discussion. May Allah protect you. Is it ما قلت له وينه باقي May Allah protect you. Thank you for holding this great forum upon which we can rely to have better conclusions. Here we are going to discuss the regulations and laws in addition to discussing the Saudi Grain Initiative. As you know, thank God, we are talking about the great efforts in planting trees, which includes broadcasting the voices of the green environment, especially starting from seeds, steadfastly talking about how to preserve. There are almost plants in the Middle East, plus the genetic seeds in the KSA. Plus, there are regulations for seeds for the Middle East, in addition to the other regulations. We rely on these regulations to constrain the laws abide by the claims in the regulations to rely on in the upcoming years. Almost the topic is mainly concerned with the economic trees and fruit trees, which realize the Vision 2030 in the kingdom. There are many other key regulations which we can rely on, growing nurseries, growing high quality nurseries in the kingdom, and its better site which can realize success in terms of nurseries. There are also many increasing aspects which can improve the high quality of the soil, concerning the genetic and economic aspects, which in here can take more than 5 stations, which can be constructed and evaluated and worked on, numbering and planting and others and many others. There are also, thank God, producing mother trees in addition to following and monitoring plus evaluating these trees. Here too we can work on opting for the right mother, on which we can rely on increasing more seeds, high quality seeds, free from any diseases. There are also many accredited conventions and the degrees of nursery, relied nurseries. Concerning on relying increasing aspects, there are mainly two aspects to know what is the difference between the species. There are Newboff analysis, which is the distinctive feature of morphology and genetic aspects to know the difference between the species, which has a great high quality evaluation to know and to distinct between the better and the worst species. In addition, there are two cards, the white and the blue cards. And the blue cards rely on selling the plants plus the evaluation and work on the nurseries areas around the kingdom as a first, plus the reserves and other genetic banks, and the community management, on which we can rely on increasing the whole plants starting from it. We can opt for 3 plants around the kingdom, 9 areas of the kingdom. Then we can opt for 3 plants of each species. Along which we can realize this vision. This is almost some of the descriptive aspects we have, along which it's prepared more than great species, along which there are many other databases on which we can rely on numbers, including the chemical analysis and the distinctive harvests, upon which we can opt the best trees. We can also rely on the genetic aspects, upon which we can benefit from analyzing the plants, especially ensuring that they are free from any default and any other diseases. Nurseries are very important when it comes of growing plants. And now we are talking about the quality of the seeds and the sustainability when it comes to vegetation field. And now, what are the aspects along which we can rely on to sustain the quality of seeds? Based on the council, the Middle East Council Cooperation Council, we are ensuring to have high caliber professionals in this field, in addition to having database and monitoring to facilitate all these actions, plus having relied banks, because not any plant not any plant can plant, then at the end we can come up with a bad or high quality tree. The economic part is between 9 up to 10. Now, what we can know is to ensure that we have in high quality trees under the light of climate change and different environment aspects, which can differ from one area to an area. Asir area is totally different from the Ha'il area. شكرا لعرضكم القيم هذا.
Please go ahead. I'll reserve my questions for afterwards.
Would it be possible for me to stand up at the podium? I need to point to the presentation.
I think that should be fine if you'll feel comfortable doing that. Sure, and just to remind you, we're keeping it short to give everybody a fair chance.
أذكركم بأننا سنبقي هذا الأمر قصيرا.
Is the mic clear? I'm so short.
هل يعمل؟
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, His Excellency.
السلام عليكم
It's
معالي
my pleasure and privilege to
سيداتي
be
وسادتي.
speaking to you today
إنه
on behalf
لشرف
of
لي أن
NEOM.
أتكلم
I'm
معكم
joined today
اليوم.
by my colleagues Najat Al-Hashim, and she's
أنا
manning
اليوم
our
مع
booth,
زميلتي
and my other
نجاة
colleague
الحتيم.
Miguel Ferreira is sitting in the audience, and they'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
أكون سعيدة بأن أجيب أي
So
تساؤل
NEOM is
لديكم.
situated in the northwest part
إذا
of
نيومي
of the
تتواجد
kingdom, and we
في
are bound
شمال
here by the Gulf of
المملكة
Aqaba and the ecosystems here of the marine section
والنظام
of the
البيئي
Red
هنا.
Sea. NEOM also has a very big diversity of ecosystems, and the NEOM
NEOM
Nature Reserve
متنوعة
was
بيئياً.
established with a mandate to protect, to enhance, and conserve these very
تحاول
important
أن
ecosystems.
تحافظ
So
وأن
NEOM has an approved regreening strategy, which
إذا NEOM
which has a very ambitious target of planting 100 million trees, grasses, and shrubs
هدف
by
طموح.
2030. Within NEOM, we have
في نيوم لدينا
within NEOM we have many ecosystems.
لدينا
The regreening strategy will
نظم
not be
بيئية
looking at
كثيرة.
the red desert or the Hezmo. We will be
لدينا
focusing completely in the
الصحراء.
lower desert areas and some areas of the mountains. And
سنركز
this
على
area that we are regreening covers 95%
هذه
of the
المنطقة
landscape.
التي
The other
نحاول
5% will
تحضيرها.
be development. Fortunately, we've got very good stakeholders and partners, and we have this
لحسن الحظ
opportunity to
لدينا
create an
شركاء
ecosystem
جيدين.
that's in keeping with the desert biome. So here, we use a
هنا
science-based approach. We use
نستعمل
existing knowledge.
طريقة
We do knowledge harvesting. We also
علمية.
have consultants and partners such as KAUST to help us develop a strategic management plan to feed into our regreening strategy. We actually use the philosophy of the right plants in the right
في
place so that we can
نستعمل.
enhance ecological restoration. And with that, we actually have an active planting program where we remove the
ولدينا
livestock from the landscape that we're restoring, put up fences, and then actively plant. We also use recycled water from our water treatment plants to irrigate all the plants that we are planting. What we found, quite surprisingly, is when you reduce the impact of livestock and you actively plant the right plant into the right ecosystem, you get a very good natural regeneration response. And we've been able to determine that within our ecological areas, a higher density of natural regeneration actually surpasses what we are already planting. To make sure that we create this resilience mosaic of vegetation through the landscape, we actually have a staged approach where we identify areas for regreening and then move through the landscape actively planting. One of the key lessons that we've learned so far is that you need to develop good partnerships. And we are working with our contractors to have an end-to-end system where you engage with your contractor, empower them to grow the right plants, engage with them to understand what ecological restoration is actually about, and in the end, actually set up monitoring programs to ensure the sustainability of your program. And that's what we're doing at the moment. Here, what I can show you is, this is Manifa, the first area that we've planted. We started in 2023 in January. And part of the stage approach here is you can see we've identified what we call plantable areas based on the ecosystem that's already existing, based on the topography, based on the existing vegetation, to make sure that we're supporting the ecosystem and actually kick-starting the ecological restoration processes. As you can see, it's a staged approach from 2024 through to 2030, and we actually added on a few extra years to ensure the maintenance of these plants because they will need some care. Some of our successes to date, starting in 2023 January, we've actually planted more than 2 million native plants. We use a palette of about 21 species. Within the regreening areas, we've established that there are natural regeneration of up to 53 native species, and we've managed to restore 1,400 hectares to date. And this year for 2024, we have a target of 7.5 million plants in our restoration areas. It's very important to the success of the project to have good planning and partnerships. And as I've said, over the last 2 years, we've been doing a lot of science-based research and empowering our contractors. And we've looked at different plots, piloting different species to make sure that our stage program actually has continuity and sustainability. And further to this, the regreening has an additional role of supporting the rewilding program, which means that in areas that have been regreened within 2 years, we will allow the antelopes from the rewilding project to access those areas. We also have an approved palette of 148 native plant species, and we were grateful for the assistance of NCVC to help us develop this very relevant native plant species palette. One of the biggest challenges we found with our regreening program is the lack of diversity of species, native species, in the market at the moment. So to deal with that problem and to support our ecological restoration, we actually have our own native seed collection program. Here you can, Here you can see our field rangers have been collecting citrullus and doom palm seeds, and we need to have climate-adjusted seed from NEOM to plant the right tree in the right place. And because we're expecting stochastic climate change events, we need to make sure that the plants we're planting are from NEOM and that are adjusted to those climates. To date, we've got nearly 2,000 kgs of local native seed in our seed bank. And we're also establishing seed orchards so that we can have a constant source of seed, available seed. We can scale up the program, and more importantly, that we need to create the diverse palette so that we can reach our target of 100 million native plants by 2030. We're very lucky to have contractors who have established a nursery for us, a native plant nursery. It was established actually in May. We've been operational for 12 months now. We're completely solar powered, and we've germinated over 40 native species already. We also support the seed collection program, and we're also focusing on the rare and endangered plants within NEOM. Our plant production is well underway. We've got 1 million native species in stock to support our regreening program, and we've had really positive results with the doom palm, with the wild almond from seed collected in Jebel Al-Awaz, which is the highest peak in NEOM, and also success with the wild juniper and a number of other rare species. Just an example of what can happen within a very short period. This was in September. This is Manifa. We hadn't intervened at all. Here is a typical desert biome situation. We put in the irrigation. plant the correct species, and then within 8 months, you can see the establishment of the existing vegetation is recovered, the planted plants are recovering well, and within these areas where we've excluded livestock at the same time and applied water to the system, the natural regeneration of the herbaceous layer and the grasses have come back remarkably well. And this is heartening to us because here we can see this is natural regeneration and kick-starting the ecosystem services and processes which we want to achieve across the landscape scale. So we've only been regreening actively for the last 18 months. It's been a steep learning curve, and we're happy to share any of our lessons that we've learned with all of you, our esteemed partners in this program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That's a lovely insight on what NEOM has been doing. Great efforts so far. Dr. Damien, you will be next. That's really great efforts. But before we start, may I ask her just a quick question while you get your presentation situated? So now, great efforts from NEOM. I mean, you mentioned, more than 2 million native plants, 1,400 hectares of restored land. So what lesson can be learned, if you may, or transferred to other projects from NEOM experience? It's the button, perhaps you can... No?
Yes.
Is the light on?
Yes, the light's on.
Okay, can we have the mic please on? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Fatima. That's a really relevant question, and I've actually consulted with my team on this because we wanted to give a very relevant answer.
Yes.
So just a few points to mention. What we found is exclusion fences, keeping livestock out, actually accounts for a lot of regeneration, which was very surprising. So the seed bank already has seeds. If you just create the right conditions, nature will actually show you the way. We've also found that understanding the landscape is key so that you can replace the species that aren't already there to create your biodiversity processes. And that's linking again to nature finding the way. Make sure that you get your own seeds. For us, having NEOM seeds in NEOM is very important. It's very tricky to get that right, but if you get the right people in the right place,
And perhaps that helps ensure sustainability, no?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. What we found is try and automate your systems, support the Saudi initiatives that are creating mechanization to improve the delivery speed, because our plants work in a much slower time frame than us. They're slower. We want instant gratification. They take longer to establish themselves. What we found is tracking the survival rate of your plants in the ground is important because you need to have quick feedback loops. Don't make the mistakes. Like Dr. Chris was saying previously, learn from the mistakes. Don't plant the plants that are not surviving. And then also very crucial for us is take your service providers along for the ride. Use the opportunity to explain to them what ecological restoration is and get that capacity building within the regreening sector so that everybody has a clear understanding of what your long-term objectives are. And then finally, make all your interventions sustainable. It's not just cost effective, it's also good for the environment. We use recycled water, we upcycle a lot of our machinery and our equipment, and also we use recycled water because water is a limiting factor in our landscape.
Yeah,
and
I heard you mention that in your presentation, and I wanted to ask you about that.
Yes. So we have a number of communities in NEOM, and the water that goes through the communities is sent to our special water treatment plant, and then we deliver it to key sectors within the regreening. So it's treated recycled water, and it's delivered on a daily basis.
Lovely.
And it's a sustainable resource because NEOM will be hosting millions of people going forward. And we don't want to be wasting our water just going into in somewhere where it's not going to have a direct benefit to the environment.
Thank you for those lessons learned. And I'm not an expert on the field, but I feel like I could use them in my own personal home little experience. Dr. Damien, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me. And I'm just going to take you through very briefly how we are operating at Red Sea Global in terms of some of our nursery operations. Our mission at Red Sea Global is to act as agents of change by partnering with the world's greatest mind to spearhead new innovations that reimagine the boundaries of our sector and create a better world for people and planet. It's from this statement that everything else comes from, as the statement acts as an umbrella. We are a leader in sustainable development, and we aim to preserve, protect, and enhance the environment through regenerative development and tourism. We are situated between Duba and Umluj, and we already have completed an island destination hotel, St. Regis, an inland resort, Six Senses Southern Dunes. We've completed the Red Sea International Airport. Everybody's welcome. Please look us up and spend your holiday time with us. We're also developing Thule Island, which is be opening very shortly. We have other destinations opening over the next few months and throughout the year. We have a rich biodiversity that we need to preserve and enhance and add to, both terrestrial and marine. We're based on 94 islands. We're developing 24 of them in the Red Sea Project. And our habitats are mainly centered around mangroves, coral reefs, seagrass, land vegetation, marine mammals, and birds. We also have countless others which are included in that and under those headings. I want to talk to you about two areas today, if I may, mangroves and our nursery. In the previous session, ecosystem services was mentioned, and the ecosystem services deliver natural capital. Mangroves, as my colleague said, contain and sequester more carbon than any other coastal species. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is bad, carbon within plants is good. And so mangroves create huge carbon store. They also act as fish nurseries. All of the fish and protein that we eat, much or most of those fish stocks start their lives within mangrove habitats. So if we're losing any of those, we're also losing fish stocks. And when we're able to add mangroves, we're able to add opportunities for fish stocks. And mangroves also contribute to coastal protection in terms of large waves and chaotic wind and nature events. So last year we started our ambitious programs working very, very closely with the NCVC, and we planted 1 million mangrove saplings and we collected seeds. And those are all being planted out in habitats within our close area. And these habitats are all carefully selected based on tidal influx, the soil, and exposure to the sea. We have, as I said, we have 1 million mangrove seedlings last year, and we also went and planted out 650,000 of those in and around our assets, including the St. Regis Resort and in the wadis and in other areas. It's important to know that when you plant mangroves close to wadis, we have empirical evidence that because of the flush of water coming out of the wadis, they contain more nutrients, and that adds to mangrove success. And right now, we are in 2024, and we are aiming to go for 1.7 million seedlings this year. And that's ongoing. We have a very large group of hardworking team members at the Red Sea site working in these basins. And we collect the seeds from within our area to maintain genetic hereditary and diversity within our area. And this is all going on as we speak at the moment, and we are well on track to meet this target for this year. These are just some of the initiatives. We just went past International Mangrove Day, and we are actively engaging with all of our staff to come out onto the sites and to plant mangroves. And we obviously make it a fun day. This is an enjoyable activity. And we have so far had worked with the Portuguese Biopolis organization and other our contractors and our consultants, including our asset operators such as St. Regis Hotel and Six Senses Southern Dunes, and everyone's involved in working closely to plant our mangroves and our mangrove seedlings. Onto the landscape nursery. This is one of our shining examples and our shining assets within the Red Sea project. And the landscape nursery is built within a few kilometers of the ocean. And it's the region's largest nursery and will provide more than 30 million plants for our destinations. And so just remember that the driving force between having a nursery was to add to and enhance our guest experience and our assets which are already built and are currently being built. And we work very closely with our designers and our consultants, including landscape designers, to work towards planting and making our destinations serve a function in terms of adding to biodiversity, but also to adding to the excellence for guests and visitors to Saudi Arabia. We have a figure here of 5 million, but yesterday I spoke to the director of our nursery. We now have 6 million plants which are being nurtured. And we also have an advanced stage seed propagation program for native species. And the previous speaker spoke about the importance of native species, and these are also difficult to propagate because the native plants of our region thrive in arid environments. They don't need much water, and so there are difficulties associated with that. We are aiming for upwards of 80 species in the near future. We have 44 species which we have successfully propagated up until now. So that's just us in a nutshell. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions or chat with anybody afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Damien. Lovely said. And those numbers you've mentioned really do reflect the Red Sea Global and the great work they have done as of yet. And my question for you would be how they operationalize their greening project, and what are the key elements of their success in that specific sector?
Thanks for the question. All of our, thanks to great leadership, I would say that most of the elements of our success relating to this is our culture. And our culture is that we, from the very top, all the way through our projects, throughout life cycles, is that we are looking for where the planet can benefit and where the ecosystems can benefit and where habitats can benefit. And that's the driving force. And we're very closely aligned, with the Saudi Greening Initiative and the United Nations Development Goals. And so the main element is our people and our staff and our designers. We, in the nursery, not all, but most of our operators we employed in the early days from the local community, and we have people from Al-Waj and Umluj working very, very closely with us. And we work very closely with those communities too when we're looking at developing these habitats, especially in mangroves and nurseries. And this, I'm just scratched the surface today. We're also working on rewilding projects and other areas where we can improve habitats. Just quickly on the terrestrial side, and going back to what was mentioned earlier, we realize that one of the main issues has been overgrazing, and we're working closely on plans and developments to work through that so that we can go back to what the habitats look like, even as shortly as 50, 60 years ago.
Lovely. Well said. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Mr. Ian Atkinson, I would like to hear from you about green enablers and your kind presentation, the clicker. All right, so meanwhile, may I ask all my panelists, now what role is there for more private sector involvement in seed sorcery and tree growing? Perhaps I'll start with you, Mr. Alan Ma, and what private sector's role when it comes to tree growing? Tree growing, yeah.
I think for the private sector, for sure, it's more, let's say, more dynamic, and it is more technology driven. So in some sort of the partnership that we say maybe the PPP model, or what we can looking for, that is, I mean, the capital injection from the private sector and also the technology transfer from the private sector will bring more momentum. Yeah.
Lovely, and I would like to hear from the rest of my panelists on that question, but please, Mr. Ian, go ahead with your presentation and then we'll continue our conversation.
Sure, and thank you very much for the invitation today. So I'm going to be talking primarily from a Qiddiya perspective. And my topic really is about purchasing trees, better quality trees for urban landscaping. So part of the background is that, as everybody knows, that the Kingdom is building new green urban infrastructure at an extraordinary pace. We've not seen development of this scale, I don't believe, ever. Now, one of the key things is this investment's about long-term outcomes. It's not about simply buying trees or buying soils or other outputs. However, partly because this has been done so quickly here in the Kingdom, the nursery industry and the associated industries, like the people that supply soils, for instance, tend to be so focused on the short term. And I think that it's critical that buyers of trees and other plants, such as Qiddiya and the other PIF projects, need to help industry to improve. The reason I'm saying is that we won't get outcomes like I'm showing here if we continue to buy some of the sort of material that's available currently on the market. Things have to change. And my topic is to talk about the Australian experience, for obvious reasons, in terms of how standards and guidelines can transform industry in terms of its outputs. These programs are long-term. For instance, the Nursery Industry Accreditation Scheme, it's a set of best practice management guidelines. It's actually going to have its 30th anniversary this year. So these are long-term programs. What this scheme does in Australia is provides a set of guidelines that ensure that plant production businesses of all kinds are operating according to industry best practice. And industry best practice is determined by both the industry but also with scientific inputs. It's raised the level of professionalism within many businesses in Australia extraordinarily. The differences now compared to when I started working in industry about 30 years ago are quite extraordinary. It started in 1994 and has developed many benefits. And the critical thing is the benefits are not just to the buyers, the benefits are also to the nurseries themselves, with demonstrated ability to have better profits as a result of this, and we as buyers get better plants. The second example is particularly pertinent to my topic today, which is about buying trees for urban development. There's an Australian standard called AS2303, and it's specifically about tree stock for landscape use. It specifies both the above ground and below ground requirement for trees that are to be supplied for landscape use, going into exactly the sort of projects like Qiddiya. It formally became an Australian standard in 2015, but the original work based on scientific research was actually published in 2003. So again, it's been something that's been around for a long time. One of the really useful things is it provides a common reference point for both tree suppliers and buyers. It gives everybody a common language and benchmarks for everybody to follow. So it's a set of guidelines, a set of standards for people to use. It's not compulsory to use, but nearly all the major landscape projects in Australia use it as their benchmark in terms of buying trees from the open market. The third example you might not think is a terribly relevant one, but it's to do with Australian standard that's related to composts, soil conditioners and mulches. If Saudi's investment in long-term green infrastructure is going to be sustainable, you need to get these inputs right. And my own personal observation is that compost, for instance, nearly everybody in this room has got a different idea in their head about what I mean when I say compost, because there is no guidelines, there is no standards. These specify the requirements for both composts, soil conditioners and mulches. Its aim is not just to help industry, its aim is to protect human health, because if you do composting wrong, you actually can create problems for human health, the environment, and encourage the beneficial and sustainable use of valuable nutrients and organic matter that are in the waste streams that come out of our major cities, whether that's green waste or food waste. And it gives very specific guidance about how to practice for composting systems to produce a quality product. Now, one of the reasons why I think the Australian experience is relevant is that, of course, in terms of the climates of the world, Australia contains some highly arid climates, and we in many ways have conditions similar to Saudi.
And Mr. Ian, allow me to ask you here about the Australian experience, as you have mentioned. Now, when it comes to standards for urban trees, is there a way or standards for native plants and seed collection and storage to be followed?
Look, I had the great pleasure of working with the KAUS team that wrote some of the reports for the Saudi Green Initiative on this very topic. And the first thing is to note is that the problem of having high volumes of high quality seed that is preferable for that region is an international problem. It's not just something Saudi's facing. Australia's facing exactly the same issues, the USA is facing exactly the same issues. And so there are some guidelines and standards that could be adapted for use here, including things that people like NEOM, for instance, have already done themselves. And I think it's an absolutely critical thing because in my opinion, there are the two most critical threats to the Saudi Green Initiative are the lack of water and the lack of high quality seed. They are by far the two biggest challenges.
That's very well said and put. And now, for respectful of time, I would like to give Mr. Alan Ma. We will get back. Yeah, Mr. Allen, would you please go ahead and proceed with your presentation so we can get this conversation going before we run out of time?
You mean the presentation?
Yes, please. You have one, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you finished the presentation? Okay, I'll be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Which bottom is the down?
It's the small green one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So. Okay. So, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm Alan Ma. So I'm the CEO of BGI MENA region. Actually, we have the RHQ license. We're based in Riyadh to cover the whole region. Actually, I think it's a great honor for me to be here. BGI stands for Beijing Genomics Institute. So we're from a very mixed, let's say, institute, have the research arm, have the college, and also have our commercial arms. So for the commercial arms, I just want to explain that we take the biotech and the genome as the platform. So this platform will not only enable the human health, but also, let's say, for the plant, for the animal, for the diversification, and also for the, let's say, the breeding. So all these very interesting technologies. So this is the briefing of about BGI. Actually, BGI was born in 1999, and we were born for the genome study and the biotech studies. So during that decade, this is the first human genome project, which is conducted by 1999. And BGI was one of the initiator and the participator of the Human Genome Project, which is to decode the human genome. And from that, we are in a journey to decode everything, not only the human, but also the plant, the animals. I just to show these two pictures. These are the key milestones to explain why we are here. So first, this is during the pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, BGI is the exclusive partner with the kingdom for the mass testing, which is based on the PCR technology. Maybe you will be surprised that why we're in the why we're in the healthcare field, but at the same time in the agriculture field, as I just now explained. So they share the same platform, which is the, let's say, the molecular testing, which is the precise testing platform. So this is the first milestone. Another milestone is the GenoLive. So this is the first precise medication and also the precise, let's say, the testing for the plant and the animal lab in the kingdom. So this is set up last year and a joint venture by BGI and the Alphasalia Group. And now this lab already gets the local content credit and have a wild collaboration with MIWA, NCVC, and now also with NUM as well. Yeah. So this is China National Gene Bank. And in terms of the data capacity, this is the #1 in the world. And we can see that is approved and funded by Chinese government, but fully designed by BGI. So this is a very successful PPP model. Come back to your question, so that BGI, we bring the cutting edge technology, we bring our know-how in this field, and to be partnered with the government. So this is a very successful model, and our vision for this China National Gene Bank that is preserved for the future. So not only for the human samples, but also for the plant and for the animal samples. Regarding the, let's say, it is a very cutting edge and a fully automated bank, we can see there are 3 stages. The first, that is to store the samples. The second is to do the sequencing, and we see the reading, to read the gene. And the third, that is the analyze. We see the interpretation and analyze. So regarding the seed bank, so this is one of the, let's say, the sub-bank in China National Gene Bank, can store 100K samples. And also it is, let's say, to customize the different samples have different storage conditions. So this is, we say, the precise breeding technologies that BGI will officially launch these technologies by 2014. And then the purpose for we call it the whole genome sequencing breeding, which is to apply to the agriculture genome, let's say, information to breeding to improve and also to accelerate the whole process of the breeding. So the purpose for this breeding, that is, we would like to find the species that is more, have the, let's say, more economic and the more environmental affordable species. Okay. And then I would like to introduce some very interesting findings by BGI. So this is the desert soilization. How can we change the mechanical properties and the life characteristics of the sand to the soil? So this is a very interesting findings we applied in China. And by lucky, last year we invited a delegation from NCVC to have a visit, to pay a visit to this pilot. After the biological materials and blended with the sand and with the certain, let's say, irrigation, this will change the sand to be like the soil characteristics and will be much friendly for the planting. So by 2022, this technology was awarded by one of the Earthshot Prize and also awarded by His Royal Highness Prince William in UK. And now we're applying this technology in the north and the west part of China, because that is also a the west desert region. Another very interesting studies and findings, that is the soil microbiome studies. So for sure, we understand that 100,000 microbiome in the soil. And then how can we isolate the beneficiary microbiome? Let's say we can be the disease tolerance. We can be, let's say, more fertilizer absorption. So this depends on the microbiome. So that's why this is a study we collect the microbiome samples from China and all over the world, and then isolate the microbiome samples to understand which microbiome can benefit in which functions, and then to develop this microbiome fertilizer we see. And then this is under developing because we believe the Saudi Green Initiative is really ambitious, and we're thinking how can we integrate the biotech solutions and also with the renewable energy solutions. So all these integrated solutions to have this integrated one-stop nursery and landscaping. So this is we integrate because BGI we are much focused on the precise breeding, and then for others we are integrated with other partners in China and to make the one-stop solutions. And this is something very interesting for the interior, for the indoor design. We have one subsidiary company focused on the Morse studies.
That's a really interesting picture. Thank you for sharing it.
So this is all. Finally, what I want to say that is for the precise technologies, for this such kind of biotechnologies, it is no ending. So I welcome everyone to join this journey.
Thank you. And I have a question here about the germplasm resource for seed banking. What are the best way to ensure effective preservation and management for the germplasm resources for seed banks, for example?
Well, I think there are some keywords. The first, I believe, is the standardization. So because I heard the germ plasma bank, seeds bank, from government entities in Saudi, and from the companies like Neum, right, and also from, let's say, from the semi-government like the Seed Center, right? We have a lot of good discussions. But I believe the most important, we need to set we need to have the high-level design and to standardize it. So what kind of data, what kind of seeds we want to store, right? The live samples or let's say the DNA data, right? This is the first, the standardization. And the second, I believe that is the digitalization. So the digitalization, one term that means we need to have the DNA data of these samples, not only in the sample itself, but also the DNA information. Because if only the sample without the DNA information, we cannot do any analyze and let's say applications. So the DNA information and plus, I believe, the network. So all this data, all these samples should be shared around this network. And the third, I believe, is the commercialization. So this commercialization will feedback the research. And for sure, this is a very long journey. So from the branding and then to commercialization.
Yeah.
Everyone is talking about how can we find the species which are more water tolerance, which are, let's say, dry tolerance, right? But I'm sure this is a long journey. This needs the private sector involvement, and I believe this needs also the mechanism to encourage to commercialize it. So once we find the way to commercialize it, people are encouraged to have more study on it.
It's a long journey indeed, but it's a worthwhile journey. Thank you.
Exactly.
I already ran out of time, but I really want to hear one more time from each and every one of you. Dr. Nasser, Mr. Ian, and Mr. Allen, what are the key challenges Saudi Arabia is facing with quality seed supply for large restoration projects? Mr. Ian, I'll start with you.
Sorry, it's not working.
Mike, please. Mr. Ian, yeah, please go ahead.
The key challenge, I believe, in Saudi is there is no effective seed market for native seeds. All right, if you want to buy a Ziziphus spina Christi seeds, you can buy, probably 100,000 of them tomorrow. But in terms of many of the species that the projects are interested in, the seed supply is simply not available. So it needs to be developed in terms of it's encouraging, for instance, seed orchards and so on. But that's the biggest challenge, is there is no effective market for native seed in this kingdom.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Mr. Ian. دكتور ناصر، التحديات الكبرى التي تواجهونها فيما يخص جودة البذور المستخدمة في المشاريع الكبرى.
بالنسبة للتغير المناخي يعتبر هو التحدي الكبير جدا، إضافة أن نحاول قدر المستطاع بإذن الله أن نشوف وش أفضل الظروف وش أفضل الموارد الوراثية اللي تحاول قدر المستطاع أنها تقاوم ذلك التحدي من ناحية مواجهة التغير المناخي، مواجهة الحرارة، مواجهة الملوحة العالية، وهذا ما نحاول قدر المستطاع أن يعني نؤقلم بعض الموارد الوراثية ذات الأصول الجيدة، أن نحاول نطورها بإذن الله ونحسنها.
بإذن الله. شكرا لك دكتور. Mr. Allen, challenges with the quality of seeding and seed supply?
Well, let's see the full value chain of this issue. So we have the collection, we have the storage, and then we have the breeding. So all this, the value chain, I believe the talent, technology, and also I believe the mechanism, the SOP. So these are the keywords I want to share.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Now, my last question for the rest of my panelists. Mr. Abdulaziz, Damien, and Michelle, what are the key challenges Saudi Arabia is facing with tree supply for plantation projects? Sayyid Abdulaziz, تفضل.
سلاسل الأشجار, the quality of the trees from the moment that we pick the seedling, we care for it in an attentive way, and also look at the region and the environment in that region. For example, in Riyadh, we plant certain trees, and in other regions, other trees.
In our experience, we need to appreciate the diversity of trees that we have in Saudi Arabia. The kingdom has got some really important and vulnerable species that might have some long-term value, whether it's a superfood or some kind of, financial value. So I think the value add, linking it to some kind of science-based research, understanding the quality needs, and then also I think linking it to a long-term deliverable. So we start now, as Abdulaziz said already, and think with the long term in mind, and acknowledge that time frame, acknowledge that process, and then build in your capacity so that ownership transfers to the kingdom. And then they can, if there's constituency, if there's ownership, you'll get that buy-in and the long-term sustainability of our native trees specifically.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. Dr. Damien, please.
Thank you. Microphone? Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think there's two parts of the answer. First of all, as my colleagues have already said, simply the pace and the scale of what we're doing here, all of us together, especially in the Giga projects, is probably not been encountered before. And it's thanks to great leadership that we are going as fast as we are and as successful as we are. But trees only grow at a certain pace. They don't rush themselves. They only grow at a certain pace. And I think that's one of the challenges. And secondly is for us and for everyone to get a better understanding of the culture behind trees in terms of what they mean to the history of Saudi Arabia. I'll give you a small example. Salvadora persica is a beautiful tree with an amazing pungent smell. It produces miswak. It also has a very, very cultural and many ethnobotanical properties. And as we start understanding those, we can work towards creating our palettes and delivering more in terms of our various projects that we're all working on. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Damien Smith, for being with us and having this thorough answer. Engineer Abdulaziz Al-Mikbil, Dr. Nasser, Michelle from NEOM, Ian Atkinson, and Mr. Allen Ma. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. It was beautiful having this conversation, and please forgive our short and tight time. Thank you to you also, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you.